Friday, everybody. What's up? What's up? How you doing?
Sasha Nash up in his house.
Whoop, whoop. Breaking it down.
Break it down. Yeah. All right. So, welcome. Thank you guys who have
tuned in.
tuned in. And we're still brand new. Yes. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. We're gonna start out, today just talking about Born Legacy and why we started it. For those of you who aren't familiar with who we are and why we're doing what we're doing, we just want to share a little bit about our stories and why we started this mission and why we decided to come and start this journey on YouTube. So about 10 years ago, Ashley and I, we met in a trap house. We were both walking some very self-destructive paths because we had so many limiting beliefs that were holding us back to standing in our true power. We lived with so much pain and anxiety and frustration, and for a very long time we didn't know anything other than that. We didn't know that there was hope for anything more. We didn't know how to break free, and we didn't have the right supports around us to be able to get out of those places. So a little bit about me. I grew up really poor. My mom had 3 kids. She was a single mother, and life was tough for us. We really struggled, and we lived in some environments that just weren't very suitable for children. And don't get me wrong, my mom did her best. She was an amazing mother. She did what she knew. But the things that I was exposed to in those environments really shaped my belief systems, not only about life, but in particular about men and what a real man looked like. So I didn't have a great relationship with my dad, and I was bullied a lot at school. So fast forward into my teenage years, I was so desperate for love and connection because I felt so alone that I always sought that kind of affection in the wrong places, particularly in men. Now, because I had this view that a man was supposed to be dominant and violent and controlling and aggressive, those are exactly the types of men that I went for. So obviously you can imagine how I ended up in some abusive relationships, and that just, did such a number on my psyche that I turned to drugs and alcohol as a means to escape this reality that I just didn't know how to deal with. And, after trauma after trauma after trauma, I was just in this very dark place where I was like, I don't even know who I am anymore. I was waking up in the morning sniffing cocaine and just no vision for my life, just partying all the time. I was hustling drugs. I couldn't even hold down a job. And it wasn't until somebody came into my life and was like, what the hell are you doing with yourself? Like, you're better than this. That I was like, what? I am? There's something more than this? And, it took me a lot of time and a lot of energy and money invested to be able to see that there was something more. But fast forward to now, I'm living a life that I never even dreamed was possible. And this is only the beginning. So Ash, if you wanted to share a little bit about you.
Yeah. You don't always necessarily have to come from, a poverty or a broken household. Like my family was, my parents divorced when I was young, but I was kind of a middle class-ish family, and my parents did the best they could. We had structure, we had rules, we had discipline, we had we also had freedom, and we got to explore, and we didn't always have everything we wanted, but we lived a pretty comfortable life. But through different experiences, different blending families, there was a lot of challenges. And especially when my dad walked out when I was younger, nothing wrong in that, but he did what he knew to do. But I grew up not believing I was good enough, and I felt like I had to earn his love, and I had to be a certain way to get that love. And I always felt like a black sheep in my family, and I could never do it right, and I always felt like I wasn't smart enough or good enough. And those beliefs really shaped the people I hung around, the experiences I was gravitated towards. I started to rebel to try to find a sense of love and worthiness, and I always seeked that in the most wrong places, and I was always trying to go after men that didn't actually want me or like me or didn't value me and saw me as a object. And in turn, I ended up getting into different addictions. I walked a life of prostitution for a while, and I was in abusive relationships, toxic relationships, and I remember being in high school and never knowing what I wanted to do, because I made up what I truly believed in that time was that, you know, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and, you know, I want to travel the world and help people, and I never actually realized that my non-commitment to any career actually stemmed from the fact that I didn't feel like I was capable of actually achieving that or attaining that or being that. And, you know, of course, I also am a philanthropist and I love traveling and making a difference in the world, but I really got why I wasn't able to commit to anything. And, you know, just through those destructive patterns, you know, I ended up, you know, having to learn the hard way numerous times. And it wasn't until I completely hit bottom, literally to the point where I almost died, that I really started to get it and to wake up and realize it all came down to the core belief system that I had that was running my life, that was running my show. And until I learned about myself, until I became self-aware, until I learned to really own who I am, accept who I am, and love who I am, did I actually start to commit to things and go for things. I never used to try anything when I was younger, because like I would do it, and if I didn't think I was good, I would give up, because I was afraid of failing, I was afraid of the embarrassment, I was afraid of not being good enough.
And I think that's such a common thing that everybody experiences, not just women, men too, all of us as human beings. We all have this underlying desire to be loved and to feel worthy. And sometimes we're afraid to try new things, because if we try and fail, then that, you know, we tell ourselves we're not worthy, and if we're not worthy, we're not loved, and it's just this crazy self-fulfilling cycle that never ends.
For sure.
We get trapped there.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. I heard this quote that recently, and it stood with me, and Tony Robbins said it, and it was that people do more to avoid pain than they do and will do to seek pleasure.
It's so true, and that's a lot of why we started Born Legacy, because obviously the way we share our stories now sounds very aware and conscious, and like we understand how ABC led to DEFG, whatever.
But that took a lot of deep diving, a lot of, you know, heavily diving into intense work and personal development and investing into courses over and over and over again.
Understanding our minds, understanding how we've been conditioned to be certain ways and think certain ways and act certain ways. And it's really difficult to be able to do that on your own. I don't think I would have ever been able to figure out all this on my own, or Ashley, without each other and the community we've created and our mentors and all the, you know, money we've invested into different programs to be able to become aware of all these things.
Yeah, you're not taught these things in the regular education system, which it should be taught in the regular education system, because we would be able to experience life and not stay stuck in the pain, not stay stuck in the circumstance, and we would have more problem-solving skills. We would be able to move out of our emotions faster rather than harboring that pain, suppressing that pain, not dealing with that pain.
And then operating from that place, right? Because what happens is we start to stack all of these emotions of pain and fear and trauma and, you know, all these negative limiting beliefs that we have, and then we're operating from that space, and then we're just treating people like crap, we're reacting emotionally, we're blaming the world for our problems, we're taking no accountability for anything in our lives, and then we wonder why we're miserable.
Yeah, and we wonder why people are the way they are, and we don't recognize that we're all just operating from a space of hurt, right? Mm-hmm. They always say hurt people hurt people. It's like when we can deal with our hurt, we're not going to treat other people, we're not going to be triggered and irritated and frustrated and angry as a response mechanism. We're going to step back, recognize what's actually happening, look at all perspectives rather than our own, and be able to communicate better, have better relationships.
And then we can become hurt people who help other hurt people, like we're doing right now, right? And I think it might be powerful to just share a little bit of an example of, like, you know, holding on to pain and how we treat people because of that. So this is nothing that we're talking about is rehearsed. We're just speaking from our hearts. That's what a lot of this is going to be about, because we speak from a raw, authentic place where we just like to wear our heart on our sleeves and just be real. That's what I think makes so many people gravitate towards us, because we just tell it like it is. We are real, right? And we're not always serious like this. Like, we're pretty freaking weird, goofy people too. But
you might get a taste of that. You maybe run away. You may stick a little closer. So
you're either gonna love us or you're gonna be like, bye.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like for me, for an example, like I dealt with a lot of abuse throughout my life. And, you know, we'll share more about our stories as we go on, but this isn't about us. It's about trying to deliver messages. And when we are talking about ourselves and sharing stories, it's not to talk about ourselves. It's because when we hear other people share their stories, we can resonate and be like, oh my gosh, I do that. Oh, that's what that is, right? It's like we're operating from all these spaces, but until we hear other people say it, sometimes it's not even in our awareness, right? So for me, one of the biggest pain points that I held on to was my distrust around men and having this underlying need to just be loved, right? So I was in abusive relationships. I was also sexually abused. I've been raped. I suffered a lot of trauma at the hands of men throughout my life. And so when I would end up in a relationship or potential relationship with a person who was actually a good guy, I would operate from a space of insecurity and distrust, and I would cling, and I would, wouldn't want them to do anything without me, and I would throw a hissy fit if, they were going somewhere without me, because I was so scared they were gonna leave me that I became so controlling. And then, it creates this negative toxic cycle, because then how is that person gonna react to that? Well, either they're gonna leave, or they're gonna try to probably help you through it. But when they stay to help you through it, sometimes they lower their own standards, right? It's not up to other people to save us. It's up to us to identify what our triggers are, what our emotional baggage is, and start to work through it so that we're not rippling that pain and hatred back out into the world, right?
Yeah, definitely. And so this is a big reason why we created Born Legacy, is because unless we have these conversations, people are just going to continue to operate the way that they're operating, and it's clearly not working. If you're going to sit here on the other end of this and be like, oh, my life is cool, my life's perfect, I got everything I want and need, and da-da-da-da, it's like, really take a hard look at yourself and really look like, are you actually going for what you want? Are you limiting yourself? Do you have a dream that's, you kind of just buried off because you don't know how to go for it or how to achieve it, or maybe you don't think you're worthy of it, right?
And unfortunately, our brains naturally default into this negative survival mode. Our brains, actually, it's scientifically proven that our brains hold on to more negative memories than they do positive memories. If you think back on your life, you can probably think of all these negative circumstances, all these bad things that happened to you. But if I were to ask you to remember all the good things, it'd be harder to remember those things, because it's just the way our brains are wired.
It's like a garden, right? If you have a garden and you aren't maintaining that garden, you're not planting seeds in it, you're not checking up on it, pulling out the weeds, watering it, feeding it, giving it the nutrients it needs, and also extracting all the little weeds that are going to be constantly...
The weeds are going to take over.
They're going to take over. It's just going to look like a lion's mane out of control.
Yeah.
And that's really what we have to do, is because we constantly go to that default, we have to learn and utilize and intentionally plant seeds of positivity, right? They don't just happen. The default is negative. So we have to constantly, every day, work towards changing what we're listening to, what environments we're surrounding ourselves in, what the languages that we're speaking to ourselves. And you're going to say, I don't speak to myself. It's like, well, if you really just tune in and actually listen, you're always talking to yourself. Your mind is wandering constantly. I don't know, what is it, like over 60,000 thoughts a day?
I think it's even more than that. We'll get the exact number on that, but yeah, it's a lot, right? And most of those thoughts, they're just happening naturally, and we think that there are thoughts. They're not. When we can consciously stop and say, whoa, I don't want to think about that, here's what I'm going to consciously choose to think about, that's where we start to gain power over our lives. And we will go so much deeper into all this. We're just kind of skimming the surface of the things that we like to talk about and share, because our mission is to bring light to those dark areas. We work on our bodies, we work on our jobs, we work on our monies,
our mind, our emotions.
Well, when do we stop to work on our mind, right? That's what we're here to do, right? A lot of people don't stop to work on their minds. They don't even realize that that is something that they're capable of doing. But until you learn to control your thoughts and your emotions and learn to master your mind, you have zero control over your life. Zero. Because anything externally that you're grasping onto, maybe you have a nice house, a nice career, you're making a lot of money, you have good friends. That's great. I hope that's the case. But what happens if you lose all that? What's left? Are you okay with what's left? Most people cannot say yes to that answer. But when you learn to master yourself and connect with yourself and love who you are,
everything around you will be abundant, and everything else, and the inner peace is the key to it all, right?
Yeah, and all that stuff is just a luxury.
Yeah,
right?
and it's, trust me, it's great to have. We're not saying don't have all those things.
Have it.
Yeah, the more you have, but when you have that inner peace, the outer experiences become that much more enjoyable.
So how do we find inner peace when we've gone through a lot of pain, right? If you're watching this video right now, chances are you're probably somebody who's gone through a lot of shit in your life, because that's the type of people we draw in, because that's who we are.
We're all reflections of each other, right?
We are, right? But we have to learn to not stay in that story. You are the author of your story. You hold the pen. You get to decide what you want your story to be.
And when you realize that you're actually the one in creation of your life, not just letting life happen to you, that is,
everything changes. It really does. And it's a journey. It's not like things just happen overnight. We've been on this journey for a long time, like very intensely for the last 5 years, every single day, and then even some beyond that. We've invested tens of thousands of dollars, many sleepless nights, like just so much of our brain space towards developing ourselves. But if we didn't do that, we'd still be victims. We'd still be addicts. We'd still be being abused and violent
in the streets and
living that street hood life, thinking we all thug, because that's who we used to.
She still thinks she's thug.
I'm still a little bit thug, you know. No, for real though, right? Like, you get to decide who you want to be. I think, you know, this is something just we haven't really talked about probably in a long time, but I think there's, and tell me if this resonates with you too, is like, sometimes we get to a point in our life where we're like, you know, I like this thing about that person, or I wish I was like that person. And then we make ourselves wrong for trying to replicate something that person does, right? And because we think, oh, that's not me. And we feel like an imposter, like, who am I to do that or to say that because, you know, I'm trying to be like somebody else. No, if there's a quality about somebody that you really like, if you're gravitated towards that, it's because it's already a part of who you are. You're recognizing that in somebody else because it's who you are. Mock it, become it. The only way we start to change ourselves is when we create an image of who we want to be and we start to live like we're already that. And it's going to feel uncomfortable at first, always, because you're going to be like, oh my God, like, who am I to pretend to be this? But you're not pretending anything. Who you are now is a product of your environment. You've just been conditioned to be a certain way.
And it's not to say go and become that person,
No.
but take what you do feel resonates with you. Right, you can take a little bit from that person, a little bit from that person, those qualities, and become your own, because that's, you know, we are here to discover and create and become, or not even become, we just be. But we, as we go through life, we put up walls, we put on lenses, we try to be a certain way and act a certain way and do certain things that aren't true to us because we're trying to find our way, fit in, and all these things. But when we can just like remove all those things that we actually aren't, like, you're not an angry person, you're not a lazy person, you weren't born that way, you became those ways as coping mechanisms.
And they're habits, they're not who you are.
No, and you can easily change the habit, but you have to replace it with something better. But
Yeah.
that's a whole nother.
Yeah, just all
play
ideas,
that.
right? And we're going to talk so much more in depth about these things as we start to develop this YouTube channel. We just really want to put out some feelers for you guys to give you a sense of our energy and, you know,
what we're about.
Yeah.
And, you know, just these conversations, we don't necessarily always have somebody in our ear talking about real shit, right? And so that's what we're here to do, is just talk real and help you rediscover who you truly are so that you can actually live into your full potential and love and accept who you are. And that's what Born Legacy is all about, is just learning to love yourself, accept yourself, and create the life you truly love.
Yeah, let go of that baggage. It's not you, it's not serving you. You don't need to, it's like, you know, I remember Armin Shaffi when we were at Reborn, I think it was Armin, and he was carrying around this invisible suitcase, and he's like, you know, we walk through life with this suitcase of like all this shit, all these beliefs. People throw their clothes on there, you know, the clothes are symbolic of their judgment, their criticism, their opinions, their beliefs, and we carry it with us. We don't realize that we can just let go of it, and then we're like, whoa, like what?
Where did that weight go?
Yeah, and it's just like this weight just comes off, and it's a choice. But until we recognize and become conscious and aware of these things and how to do that, we don't even realize we're carrying it, right? I know we've both gone through many times where we've hit certain like healing points in our journeys where it's just like this weight just comes off and you're like, whoa, I didn't even know that was there.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? But yeah, so anyways,
we hope you enjoyed the little chat for today, and if you like this, subscribe, follow us. We'll be posting every Friday, so we hope you enjoy your weekend. Go on and get it. And remember to not only just go out and party or enjoy yourself, but truly enjoy yourself.
Celebrate life, because you only get one and tomorrow is not promised.
Guaranteed.
Absolutely.
Okay, much love.
Peace and love.
Peace.